Live.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of You Only Be School 1 Season 2 presented by Inside IIM. I'm your host, Akshay Sirsalewala. For those who are tuning in for the first time, I'm a chartered accountant, cleared all levels of CFA, and I graduated from IMK in 2020. Since 2018, I've been associated with Inside IIM, and currently I am working with BCG. A very warm welcome once again. Today we will discuss how to get into consulting post-campus. Now, if it ask majority of the people who are getting into a B school, most of them would want to get into consulting. It's very attractive, it's very sexy, and सबको consulting ही करना होता है. And if you want to ask someone what's your dream company, majority will also either say the big 4 or the big 3. ये सबका dream companies होता है. And here are people who have gotten those jobs and who are currently working there. So these are the best people who can answer your questions. So any question from how to get into consulting, what kind of spikes do you need in your CV to get a shortlist, to how to crack those interviews, all of these will be answered today by this wonderful panel. Also, a very important disclaimer that these are their views, their personal views, not views of their employer. So अगर समझो वरुण ने बोला तो that doesn't mean Accenture Strategy ने बोला है, it means वरुण ने ही बोला है. Great guys. So with this, let me introduce the panel. Let's start with Varun. Varun, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So hello everybody, this is Varun Sethi. I have done my graduation from BIET Jhansi in Computer Science and Engineering, so I am an engineer. Post that, I went to MBA from IIM Kozhikode. In 2020, I graduated and joined BCG, worked there for about 8-9 months, and then shifted to Accenture Strategy in Smart Connected Products Design and Development team as a management consulting analyst. So any questions that are around engineering, that are around freshers, that are around how to grab BCG or Accenture Strategy, looking forward to answering all of them today.
Thank you so much, Varun. Good to have you here. Let's maybe go to Ria. Ria, why don't you go next?
Hey folks, this is Ria here. I'm currently working in Bain. Before that, I've done my MBA from ISB, and I'm also a CA and a chartered financial analyst. So also I've worked in Aditya Birla Group for almost 3.5 years. So any questions around finance, how does it work for CAs, MBA, etc., happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Swati, why don't you go next?
Hey everyone. Also, like Akshay said, that a lot of people have this dream. MBB was my dream for almost 5 years. So there are people like that also. Hi everyone. I am currently working with Bain. I'm in my first year at Bain. Before that, I did my MBA from IIM Kozhikode. I am an economics graduate from Delhi University, and post that I worked with EY and GS for about 2 years.
And I think everyone on campus knew that, Swati, because as soon as she came on campus, she almost met most of the seniors. Yeah, I want to get into MBB. How do I prepare my CV for it? So, great that you could achieve it, post campus directly. Right. Samarth, why don't you go next?
Perfect. Hi guys, I'm Samarth Khandelwal. I recently graduated from MDI Gurgaon and will be joining the Deloitte CDD and Strategy team. Prior to my MBA, I actually graduated from Delhi University. I completed my BCom honors, and I didn't have any work ex, so I'm a fresh graduate from BCom honors and then MBA again. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great guys. So now let's begin. So the first question, which most people are still not clear about, is what do consultants actually do? So I remember when I entered B school, I was not very clear. I had heard things from different people, and I wanted to get into consulting, but I didn't know what consulting was. So guys, why don't you shed some light on exactly what do consultants do, and also maybe can you shed some light on the kind of roles which come on campus? So please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody else wants to take it up.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so consulting, if I were to define it in a very simple sentence, is the art of problem solving. So how do you really take up any problem that you face or any business faces and come up with a real life solution in a very structured manner, in a very professional manner? So that is very basic definition of consulting. If anybody else would like to add on, I'd be happy to share.
Exactly the same thoughts.
Yeah, I would just want to add some examples here. I think Samarth has already covered. So just imagine a company is facing losses. The consultant would come in and just see what are the reasons. He would do a sort of a analysis, what are the reasons, and sort of give recommendations how it can be solved. So that's just an example. Another example could be if a company wants to launch a new product, what should be the ideal market, what should be the ideal price point, all that sort of questions that come up, consultants help solve that.
A little flavor to that would also be like the kind of industries that you get to look into. The size of industries. You might be working one day for a startup versus then working for like a large TMT, company. So that kind of flavor is something that you get a lot of diversity in consulting, and then solving these different problems, whether it's a growth problem or a market sizing problem or a product pricing or packaging problem. Those are the different things that you get to do as a part of your problem solving in consulting.
So I think that there are two perspectives that I like to venture into whenever I explain consulting to somebody. First, the problems that come to most of the consultants are the problems that the people inside the company can solve by themselves easily. That's a fact. So it's not that consultants are doing something that the companies inside or their own internal strategy network can't do. It's just about the number of resources. That is, that if they are going to end up implementing the solutions or driving the strategy all by themselves, it's going to take them a long time, delaying time to market, whatever sort of problem it is, or maybe they are losing sales, or maybe the profit is not coming up, etc. First. Second, they have a very narrowed and very specific purview of where they are, right? They only know most about their own industry and their own company. Consultants come with an experience across industry, across companies, even their competitors for that matter, and with the historical significance of a lot of resources supporting them. We have an expert network that we can connect with. This expert network will not directly connect with these companies, but can connect with us as consultants. So we basically are two kind of people to these companies. First, problem solvers, of course, but also a network of individuals that they can't get access to directly. So I think if you look at the kind of problems as Swati mentioned, right, that it's diverse. It's not only limited to strategy. A lot of folks. So as Akshay said, that we would want to deep dive into the kind of roles that come on campus. So there's tier one, of course, there's MBB, then there's a big four, then there is Accenture Strategy, EY, etc. All of these firms together, I think, have an ecosystem and they have their own play in different segments. For example, if you talk about strategy per se, MBB tops it, right? You can talk about McKinsey, Bain, BCG. They're the best when it comes to strategy. And there is a reason behind it. And that is that they are pure play strategy firms. 60 to 80% of their business comes from strategy. That means they have had experiences around strategy for years of working with firms. So they have collateral that can help most of the folks that are coming with problems to them. Similarly, when you talk about Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, EY, all of these firms are, although Big Four are a little different, Accenture is a little different. I think Big Four starts with strategy, then ventures into digital ventures and ventures into technology. Accenture Strategy, on the other side, has a DNA of tech. They started as a technology company and then they ventured into consulting going forward. So the entire timeline is different, but again, the kind of projects that they end up doing is pretty much similar. They do more implementation and operational work. Wherein they look at 60 to 70% of implementation projects and the rest of 30% as strategy projects. So one of the divisions can be strategy and operations or implementation.
Right. Thanks. That is a very interesting difference because most people don't know that there's a difference between strategy and implementation as well. And as you said, Accenture focuses more on implementation versus strategy. What do you guys think about the MBBs? Because you've worked there, Ria and Swati, and also maybe you can give a perspective of Deloitte here as well, Samarth.
Yeah.
So MBBs have like a broad spectrum of industries that they work in. Like so basically, like say if you were to talk about Bain, they have a more higher influence in the private equity space because they have like the larger clients over there. And then there are different MBB, different firms with like McKinsey and BCG. They have their own standpoints in different industries. So that kind of differentiates in MBB. Plus, again, they have a lot of strategy and implementation project. I don't think there's a bias towards one. We
Right.
do a lot of strategy as well as implementation products, but like in Accenture, there is a particular bias. I do not see that in MBBs
Got it.
particularly, but yeah, but you can add to it, Swati, if anything else that you have.
I think primarily they have, what I have seen in my experience, they have a lot more of strategy projects compared to implementation projects. And another very interesting thing that I can talk about Bain, and I'm sure about other MBB also, that they have recently started working a lot with the startups also.
Yes.
So that
true.
is pretty interesting, because almost all the new age startups that we see, they are basically taking consultation from the MBBs only. So that's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah, so for Deloitte, in my experience, what I really found was that we were actually dealing, I would say particularly out my profile, so CDD, we are dealing with a lot of startups, we are dealing with a lot of public sector enterprises, we are also dealing with some big players in the industry. So I couldn't particularly categorize like we are possibly dealing with these clients. So overall, it's a mix at Deloitte and other big fours.
Great. So, guys, I hope you understood what consultants do. I think 2 points which all of the people mentioned. One is consultants sometimes are used maybe to validate their own paths which they've already made. कि यार एक external वो मिल जाए, exactly. Till they sometimes to fasten the process, because they don't have the network, they don't have the resources which a consultant could have. So these are the major 2 things why consultants are used by people, and why people spend so much money on consultants, and which is good for us. Great. So let's take the first question. So we have some fans for you, Swati, already. So Piyush Joshi has asked that this question is specifically directed to Swati. So what was the path you followed to get into MBB since joining B School? So why don't you take that up? So maybe you can talk about how you can build your profile as soon as you enter your B School. Maybe you can speak about that. And obviously others can also add to this.
Yeah, please guys, please. And I think that's such a broad question. And I think my journey was slightly different, because I was very clear since the start that I wanted this, and all my sort of actions were directed towards that. So if you look at a CV, like what are the basically 4 sort of areas that you can divide is academics. So I was very clear from the start that I have to be at least in the, not giving a number here, but I was very clear that I wanted to be in the say top 5 to 10 percentile, so that, because as I had heard from my seniors that these MBBs do look at your acads. So that was one criteria, and I made sure that whatever I was doing, I would at least focus on my academics. So that was one. Coming to the second part of the work experience. So I already had a good consulting and work experience. So I had worked with EY, I had worked with ZS. So I had sort of already had that. So I think, but nowhere the people, other freshers also can basically go there. Like if you see on the panel also, there are 2 freshers. So, but for me, I had WorkX, so that helped, sort of helped. The third thing was extracurriculars. So I knew that if I wanted a full-rounded profile, so I applied a lot of case competitions, and Akshay also had done a lot of case competitions. I know, sort of following his path only, I did a lot of case competitions. Like you would say I did around 20 case competitions during my entire 2 years. So I focused a lot on that. And I think it actually gives you a lot of insight of what you actually end up doing in my job. So the other day I was actually drawing those customer journeys. So it actually gives you a preview of what life of a consultant would be like. And it was interesting. And that was, I thought, was the best use of my time on campus. So that was the sort of third thing. And the fourth thing was the PUR, which we call that. So you don't have to like tick off all the boxes across all the points of CV, but I'm just saying what I personally did. I wanted some sort of like PUR also, some sort of leadership in the campus. So I also applied for a lot of clubs, committees, and thankfully I got through the students alumni cell. So that also helped me like interact with my batch, also do some sort of leadership activity. And I'm sure everyone already knows that because that's a part of UG also. But yeah, that's what I broadly did.
Great. If we talk about the first point which you mentioned, which is academics. So we also have one more question, specifically to that, asked by Gautam Gupta. Is there a lot of a high academic requirement to get into a job into top consulting firms? So maybe, if you could share some perspective the others could also share some perspective, that do you really think that a rank maybe or a top 15 or 10% finish is required, to maybe get a good shot, to get a shortlist from the top consulting firms? And I think most of the people on the panel are in the top, from the top 15%. So I think yeah. I think I'm the only one who's not from the top 15%. But yeah, what do you guys think?
So I'll talk about some of the experiences I've had as a fresher trying to get a shortlist in the MBBs. So in my experience, I have faced that, that if you have a 998 profile, you're a more preferred candidate over another at 997 possibly, or 989. It is a fact. It is something that is very prevalent in the industry. They are looking for merit. So having a 998 profile is definitely a charm, but having a 997 or maybe a 989, something like that, it would still work out really well. It doesn't matter if the rest of your CV covers for that. So that is something you need to focus on.
I mean, I agree with that. So basically, there are three parts, like how we divide it in ISB. There are three parts to your CV: your academics, your work ex, and your extracurriculars. And you need to make sure that each part, at least you have two spikes in. You have spikes in at least two of the parts in your CV. So if academics is that part that you want to have a spike in, then you probably need to focus on your grades.
Right. Adding some points here. So I remember I had done some analysis on this when I was in college. So in our campus, 2/3 of the people who got shortlisted from the MBBs were from the top 15% only. So the people who got shortlisted who were not from the top 15% were very few in number. So they had some other spikes, like Ria, Swati mentioned, that they could be maybe from the Placecom, or they had some good certifications on them, or they had some relevant work experience, 2 to 3 years relevant consulting experience. Maybe that helped them, or maybe they had a PPO from a top consulting firm or a top IB. That helped them. But does it make it easier to get a shortlist if you are from the top 10 to 15%? Definitely. That is at least my perspective. And you can see this trend clearly, when you talk to people on campus.
Just want to add one point there, that it doesn't just mean that if you have to be like in the top, there, in different years, there could be different cutoffs where they stop looking at your CV.
Right.
So you might want to check on that also. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are a dean's lister or a merit lister, and then you will get a shortlist, but there are those cutoffs that you might want to make. So like, for example, we had a COVID year, so our focus was not as much on acads on the grade, because they knew that there were things which were working on an online mode. But obviously, if you are from a 4.3 GPA perspective, if you're getting like a 3.2, then obviously you're not going to make that shortlist. So you have to take into consideration those points also.
One more thing I would like to add, it's not very difficult to be in the top 10 percentile. Like personally, it just feels very overwhelming that you would have to be in the top 50, like just taking an average of 500, top 50. But it's very easy. Like even if you do all your assignments on your time and like do the basic, you would be in the top 50 percentile, top 50 people. Telling from my personal experience, it's not difficult at all. It's managed. That's what I feel. It's manageable.
Like, I mean, I sort of agree with it. I don't think it is that difficult, though I cannot.
I think it's priority, Akshay.
I see that Swati is making fun of the host.
Not sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, I get it, because I don't think it's that difficult if you are regular with your submission.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you spend some time daily, I think it is easy. It is possible to get into that top 15%.
Yeah. 15.
Okay, now let's talk about some of the skills which consulting firms are looking for specifically. So you all have maybe seen the recruitment process. Obviously, you all have maybe also some of you might have also seen it from the recruiter's perspective. So what do you think are the skills which consulting firms are looking for?
So we have, I think there are 4 levers to it again. First is obviously problem solving. Second, I believe, is communication and interaction with the client. Third would be practicality and effectiveness. That means the ability to prioritize and deprioritize when necessary. And fourth, in BCG, we used to have role model. So it's basically looking at people who are capable enough to help others whenever necessary, and the entire lookout of a particular person towards life. I think all of these four things are tested generally when you sit for interviews. Primarily, I think in my experience, what I have utilized is obviously problem solving as well as communication. I think both of these, prioritizing and deprioritizing, I think working in consulting, you will have to prioritize almost everything. So irrespective of how much you want to deprioritize something, it won't happen. So I think the other two skills is something that which are very important if you want to be a consultant. And when I say problem solving, it's not coming to the solution directly or having an experience to come to the solution. A lot of people think that you have to find a solution if you're talking about problem solving. It's the approach rather. How do you basically divide everything into sub-modules, primarily find out the path and approach to solving a problem. And communication is generic communication. At the end of the day, what they're looking for is for them to be confident, in terms of leaving you in front of a client all by yourself, and you would be able to communicate and you'll not really screw up anything. So that's the idea. I think at least when you are joining from campus.
Yeah, so just adding on to that, right? A lot of the times when we talk about consulting interviews, we use problem solving. I just want to elaborate that a little bit. So imagine that if I were to give you 15 pieces of information, are you quickly able to bucket that into different categories and maybe sort of in a good manner elocute that to whatever client? So are you able to tell him that, what A, B, C, and is form factor this manner, etc. So that skill, I would say, is not inherent to all. So a lot of people would actually get lost in the detail and they would be like, how do I bucket this quickly? This is the skill when we really look at problem solving and how you put things into structure. Are you quickly able to think on your feet? And are you able to communicate that effectively? So I would say that in my interviews, I have found that elocution is sort of a major part. If I am able to come to the solution, but if I'm not able to tell the interviewer that, this is the way I'm thinking about it, etc. And I'm not able to do that in the stress of the interview. So maybe after the interview, I can tell him that, I thought about this in this manner, but I didn't approach it like that. That is something that is also very inherent to consultants, and you need to develop when you're actually practicing for your consulting interviews.
One more thing I would like to add just to that, how quickly you make sense of the numbers that are being thrown at you. That's also very, very important skill, because consultants work with numbers throughout, in and out. And so whatever numbers you get, what insight can you draw out of it? How can you synthesize the large chunks of data that you get and to get to a final answer and make some sense out of it? What does it represent? So that's also a skill that is often checked in the interviews as well.
Right.
Just one thing here, there are two things that go through the process. So first thing is you get shortlisted. So the first point where you're being judged for a consulting role is through your CV. You have typically found that, like Varun spoke about and even Samarth spoke about, your problem solving is something that they definitely want to look at. Whether you have an analytical mind, a bent of mind. And then are you also a team person? So, your leadership skills, whether you've worked in larger teams, those are the kind of things that they're trying to look through even when you are putting your CV for a review. Right. Then there is the second part, which is when you finally get a shortlist and you are doing an interview. Here, they're looking more to see whether you're able to structure your thoughts. Like Swati said, numbers, are you able to make sense of it? And generally, if I were to work with you as a team member, would I be happy working with you as a team member? So that is something they definitely want to see, how comfortable you can be in a team scenario.
Got it. So mainly, if we talk about initially, that look at your communication skills, and how good you are at problem solving, and then maybe softer aspects as well, like how easy it is to work with you, etc. These are some of the things which companies look for. Now, the next question which anybody will ask is, how do you improve, let's say, your communication skills or your problem solving skills? So any tips here, because I'm sure you must have also done few things to improve these aspects. So any tips here for people on how they can maybe improve their communication skills or problem solving skills?
Consulting has like a very structured approach to how you prepare for those interviews. The first step obviously is getting your CV right, and then you get your shortlist. And once you have that in place, typically there's like a 1 to 2 month period when you can prepare for your interviews. There, you start off with your guesstimates, then you get into the case interview prep, and there are multiple types of problems that you get, from profitability, growth, mergers and acquisition, and multiple different frameworks that you kind of understand. So these frameworks are more as an aid to help you structure your thoughts. That's where your problem solving becomes more edged and more developed. And therefore, then you work in case groups, which is where your communication starts improving. So in your case groups, you're doing the cases, giving it to each other. You're trying to do it in a time frame and understand how you can keep your communication simple and effective within that limit.
Right.
And then obviously you do a lot of mocks, etc. You have your buddies who are assigned to you. So you're working with somebody who's already in a consulting firm, has gone through the progress, and will help you as a mentor and guide in getting the right framework and getting the right way to speak about it. And this entire process, it's very exhaustive. It's very exhausting also. You are constantly working on that, and I think usually during this time, cats take a back foot in most colleges. So this, I think, really helps you to prepare for that. But like generally being able to communicate in a simple manner so that the next person can visualize what is going to happen. How are you thinking about it? That's kind of where you want to go about it.
Right.
I think just to add to that, Akshay, I think Riya said a very important thing. You make a group of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you basically study with them. I think at least in my time, realized that when you make that group, right, kind of people you choose is also very essential, because they need to be from different backgrounds and different dynamics, so that you also get challenged time to time when you perform with them. Also, rotation of these groups, it happens in almost every college. So there's a process that you will end up following. And then obviously written material, Riya just said, framework is there, etc., etc. All of these frameworks will help you in the initial phase. But when you are in the real interview, I think what really helps is that group of people. And we used to always be these 3 people. One person would be, going through the entire case interview. The other person is the person who's asking questions. The third one is the observer, who is supposed to just look at you and tell you later where you did well and what are the areas of development. I think it's good. It's a good practice to have 3 folks in one particular group.
Yeah. So just to sort of help you with how do you really prepare for the whole consulting thing and what is the mindset? So I would actually say 3 steps. The first one is choosing the right material. When you really look at material, you might fall into a paralytical state where you are looking at casebooks from every top B school. You are looking at case letters from a lot of these mentors online. So I would say that 80 to 90% of these casebooks are similar from all top B schools. So rather take up 2 casebooks and just purely focus on them. Do not get any fear of missing out of what your fellow peer is doing in respect to a casebook. Cases might differ a little bit, but the experience at the end of the day, very bottom line, will be very similar. So choosing the right material, try to restrict your material. Do not try to get into a paralytical state. In terms of material, after a point, I would recommend that you be a little myopic. So 2 casebooks. So that's about it. And the second thing I would recommend is consistency and diligence. Consulting is something that you cannot prepare for in 4 days. So you can't just say, if it doesn't come naturally to you, you can't say that 3 days I'm going to do 50 cases and I'm going to be ready for consulting. It is about doing those 5 cases every day with your peers, doing those 4 cases by yourself, and just really thinking after doing those cases at the end of the day that what could I have done better? What words could I have used? Possibly, how could I have structured this? So all of this introspection has to go after you have practiced your cases. That is how you will really get better at the skill and how you'll be perfect at the skill. The third part is, I would say, elocution. So elocution is the third part of the whole consulting unit. So after practicing cases, after getting the structured thinking, after getting your problem solving ability, you would want to make sure that you're sort of using the right terms, you're not crossing the line between being unprofessional. And this is sort of the whole step-by-step process that I personally followed, and I've seen my juniors follow, and it's been successful for them. So yeah.
one thing I would like to add here, like Samarth said, it's never about the quantity. Like I have heard people say that I've done 800 cases. That does not matter, because you will never get the same case, and you will never be able to like put any framework that you have done exactly as is. Like in my Bain interview, out of all the rounds, I could not apply anything. It's just more about getting that, building your problem solving skill. And one more thing that I used to do was, after every case that I solved, I would write down the mistakes that I've made. So at the time when I was revising, just 3-4 days before the interview, I went through all the cases that I had practiced and just looked at what mistakes I had made, and they were very similar. So, but yeah, so that's a good learning, and that's a tip. If anyone wants to follow, they can also try.
Yeah, I think I used to do similarly, but just that instead of just the mistakes, I would try to see what is the right structure to fit in here. Yeah. So that would help, because then that structure is something that you can, improvise on as if you solve more and more cases.
Basically, you should spend as much time as you've just practiced the case, that much time introspecting and analyzing it after you have practiced the case. I think that really helps.
Also, there's this thing, Akshay. So I think I followed it. I'm not sure how much everybody else did, but I never thought that I'd get into consulting. I come from engineering and, fresher. So I never had a dream of getting into consulting any which way. And I got to know about MBBs when I entered IIM. So honestly, at that point, I thought ki Microsoft ho jaye, coming from the engineering background, you want to get into Prodman, etc. That was my dream. And being a fresher, I used to think about ITC and HUL more than any other firm for that matter. So I actually was very late in preparation when the result, because I was not expecting any shortlist any which way. So when BCG shortlisted me, I think we had around 20 odd days before my first interview. Because it was telephonic at that time. I think they changed it later, but it was telephonic at that time, the first interview. And in those 20 days, I was actually focused on preparing for HUL and ITC. 7 days to the interview, I realized that, okay, I have to appear for the interview, so I should do something, right? So at that point, what I did was that I created a matrix. On one end, on the rows, I had all the industries in which PCG is working. And on the top of it, I had all these type of cases. So growth strategy, revenue upgradation, market sizing, etc. And for each of those industries and each of those things, I just used to do 2-3 cases every day and tick them off. So that I'm covering every spectrum of what BCG can come up with. Although that didn't work out in the interview, I was given a case that was completely out of this world. But that did help in terms of structuring my thoughts a little better, knowing about the industry drivers, etc. So the pre-prep knowledge that is for you to deep dive into these industries that your particular company that you are targeting is very much working in is also slightly important. I won't say that you can cover everything, but having a little bit of knowledge of those industries might help.
Very consultant-like approach, I would say. And I'm not sure if you guys did that, but did you also read a lot of cases? Like, I think I practiced less, but that helped me, because I would auto solve the case. Like, I know what I'm going to say and then what would be the response. And I think given the time that we have, like, it's just 1 month before we get the shortlist. So that also significantly helped me prepare.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, lovely points raised. Yeah, I'll just summarize it for the viewers. One is, as Varun said, find a good group of people. I think everyone, you have a set of 3 or 4 people, who you can practice with, and different kinds of people is also very important, because I remember in our group, there was someone who had a very fin-heavy background. There were some engineers who could maybe help us with cases of oil and gas industry, etc. And then there were some people who had a more humanities background. So a diverse group of people will be very helpful. Plus, different type of people take cases in a different way. So I remember. So if you remember, Yashas, if you remember, he had a very strict type of personality, and he used to take cases in a very aggressive way. Versus there are some people who take it in a very chill way. They give you time to relax, etc. So different type of people also will help you. Second, choosing the right material, as Samarth mentioned. All case books are more or less similar. But guys, if I ask you any specific case books you want to recommend over there?
Case interview cracked for sure. I think I did.
CIC.
Yeah.
I'm Ahmedabad also for me, and I think I'm Ahmedabad.
Yeah, so I think I like IIM Cal also. IIM Cal book. I followed IIM Cal. So as Akshay said, every book is pretty similar. So
I feel like for just for the frameworks to know how to put that together, and you know, if they are meaty enough, you can refer to ISB casebooks also. Their frameworks are good.
Guys, now IMK has also come out with.
Yes, and that's a good case book actually. That's a good case book.
Even I went through it. But yeah, jokes apart, if I tell, if I were to give my opinion, I follow two casebooks, which is IIM Ahmedabad and ISB. Also, if talking about the framework which was used by Varun, the matrix, the types of cases was industry. So ISB has that. The ISB casebook has that, and I love the casebook because there's a lot of theory, and apart from that, this table really helped me. So I use the same matrix which you use. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing different cases in different industries, and so that you have an idea of
everything
all the industries. Right.
I just want to add one point to that case group point that you made, that, just not just having diverse people, but also making sure some similarities in terms of your working style, because that becomes very important. Right. If two people are morning people and then one person is a night person, then you guys will have a lot of difficulty putting it together. And for me personally, having a 4K group worked better, because then two can take for each other. So nobody is, remaining in the wings and just waiting to get their turn. So just want to make sure that.
And just adding one more benefit, I just remembered that having a good group makes sense, because even if you don't get selected, so my friends got in to BCG and then they recommended me. So that helps. So that will also help you. Right. And lastly, as Swati mentioned, do read a lot of cases, because I think you can only solve cases with people for 1 or 2 hours, because that is the only time you'll get probably, others might be busy, but you can read cases for 2-3 hours, for a long time at a stretch before going to sleep, whatever. So you can do that. So reading a lot of cases helps a lot. Okay, let's take.
Just one small point I would like to add, like 2 books you can still reserve for practicing with people, and if you want to do one additional book which you think you'll miss out on, maybe you can start reading that.
And one small tip is, just like what Varun was saying, he mapped it by industry, but also just reading about the industry, that helps a lot in making your answer richer. So you have more depth in what you're saying. So just a small industry, and there are a lot of summary books or tracks that you can find. Reading on that also really helped me.
Right. So let's now take a couple of questions from the audience. So Shubham has asked a very interesting question. Any specific analytical tools which are required apart from Excel? If I were to give my opinion, honestly, they don't check those skills in the interview. Excel is good enough. Any other points which you want to make here?
It depends the kind of company you're joining. For example, for Extrat, I think for Accenture Strategy, we do, obviously for an initial stage when you are coming from campus, it's not necessary to know everything, but later stage pay, the visualization tools like Power BI, Tableau become a little bit more important, because there's heavy data lifting that is required. But I think major work that you will do 90% of the times, Excel would be more than enough.
Right, and please, go ahead.
I was just saying PowerPoint is going to be
of course.
So
of course.
Right, just adding it here, on campus, these tools are not tested at. But off campus, these tools are very much tested. I remember being, in Deloitte, what we used to do is we used to ask the incoming people to make an Excel model and also to make a draft PPT. That was one of the rounds. If you are coming to Deloitte off campus, so off campus these things can be tested, but on campus, definitely, not really needed. And Power BI obviously will be very helpful. Okay. So there is also one question specific to Varun. So I'll direct it to you, Varun. It is that if someone has poor past acads, and if he manages to do well in the top, in the B school, like let's say in the top 10%, so can he still expect to get into consulting or a top consulting firm? Because he has 57% in graduation.
57%. Okay, so I had good acads. passed twice. I was a 10.98, so I think it was fine for me at least. But I think, yes, see, the thing is, as we have already discussed this, right, that what consulting needs is a well-rounded profile. So in case in your graduation you have got 57%, I do understand there are a lot of colleges around, the grad colleges, that do not give a lot of scores to their students. So if that is the reason, or maybe you were involved somewhere else, or if that is justifiable, you have to justify it using your CV. So in the same time period when you were in graduation, what were you doing otherwise that could have, kind of compensated for your low scores? That is what people will look for in case everything else is fine. Can you expect a CV shortlist from consulting firms? Yes. But I will keep those expectations a little low, as we have already discussed that, these people really do need you to get really high scores throughout your life. So they're looking for merit and the competition. Let's face the facts, right? You're going to be in top-notch IIMs. Everybody else, every second person is going to have a 998, 997. Right. So having a 57% will not help getting those shortlists. But I think never give up hope. You never know. So for example, when I came in, I also had zero hopes. I came from BIET, not from an IIT, not from SRCC, not from DU, right? And I had zero experience. I was a fresher. But still, I was shortlisted. I went to BCG, converted the PPO. So I think story can change. It's just how you represent your story through your CV that matters. So if you do believe that your graduation scores are less, please make sure that during the same time, whatever else you have done, and utilize your time to do anything productive, cover that as a part of your CV. So that when they go through, and I can assure you, a lot of people say that, 5 seconds mein CV shortlist karte hain, 30 seconds, but that's not the case with MBBs. I have shortlisted CVs. We spent hours shortlisting CVs. We go through every point that is mentioned on that CV. So in case you have a 57% and everything else in your CV is absolutely awesome, you can be shortlisted. That is what I would want to say.
Also, Varun, I have a personal experience to that. Like my mentee last year had a 59%, and he asked me the same question that it's a deal breaker and he'll not be able to make it. And he got a final offer from Deloitte. So that happens. The good thing for him was that he had some strategy work ex. So something in your CV should basically
spike up.
That's what it is.
If you can show after your graduation a consistently upward journey, then probably that can also make up for it. Plus, again, your PORs, etc., can also help you elevate at least the academic background.
Well, so I hope that answered your question. Right. So Vivek Agarwala has asked any video series where we can learn about consulting. I think you can just go through the Inside IIM website.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of videos which will be good enough. Okay. Anil Kumar has said, please make a similar video for Prodman. We will do that next week probably. So stay tuned. Okay, let's get back to some of the questions which we had. A very interesting point made by Varun here, that MBBs do not take 30 seconds to shortlist your CV. They spend a lot more time. So, if what are the CV tips which you would want to give to the incoming batch? Are there any ways in which a person can improve his CV? Any basic CV tips from you guys?
I think so. Just one point disclaimer. I think one thing that really puts off at least people who are shortlisting your CV is bad grammar. So even if I would notice one little mistake of grammar, or people around me also, if we'll see that, we'll just completely be put off by everything else that you have done in your CV. So formatting and grammar, I think, are a must-have. Irrespective of what content you're putting in your CV, please make sure it is grammatically correct and it is well formatted. I think that would be the first point that I'd want to say. Second, as I think Ria also said that, Swati also said that, it needs to be well-rounded. That you can't have, this is what I notice sometimes, that if you have a very good work experience, you tend to ignore everything else. And 3/4 of your CV is filled with that work experience. Don't do that. We will have the interview, we will call you, we'll ask you about your work experience. That happens everywhere. So try to put something that is prioritizing what you exactly did instead of telling about the entire project context. Not necessary. Try to keep it crisp. And again, equally, so at least if there are 4 sections, try to make it a 15% section, at least allocate to each one of them. And then you can use the other rest of the amount of 40%, whatever you want to highlight more. Then third thing that Ria also mentioned was spikes. that you don't need to have a spike in everything. Don't think that if you don't, for example, the last question, right? If I don't have good academics, will I be able to make into consulting? Do I need to have a POR? Maybe 3 PORs will help, 1 will not. These are the questions that generally people have in their minds. That's not how it works. What works is that at least you have 1 or 2 major spikes in your CV for me or anybody who's shortlisting your CV to feel comfortable in giving you that one chance for that interview. That's the idea. So you find out those spikes in your CV. It could be your academics, it could be your PORs, it could be your extracurriculars, you could be a national level debate champion sometime when you were doing your graduation from DU. Yes, that's a good point to put. So what you exactly want to put, and when also chronologically, don't put something from the school, you did in 10th standard. Very important. Don't go back so in time that it becomes irrelevant today.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're putting those points that are new, that are going to create an impact on the person who is reading them. The only objective is ये बंदा impress हो जाना चाहिए 5 सेकंड के लिए बस. So that वो doubt create हो जाए कि किससे बुलाना है यार इंटरव्यू में, देखते हैं what this person is made up of.
Right.
That's the idea. तो उसी पे focus करके बनाओ CV.
And
Sorry,
yeah,
go on.
sorry.
Go on.
Yeah. Swati, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, guys. So especially for people with work ex, like your work ex section should not be very technical. Like I have seen CVs with people who have like engineering work ex, and I do not understand a thing out of that. So please don't make it very jargony. It's not everyone would be able to understand that. That's one. Second thing is try to highlight the impact, and I am sure there's some framework also for that, like RAC, which is basically result, action, and I think context. So try to highlight the impact of it. Like if you have done some exercise which has led to some, say, cost savings or whatever for that matter, begin with saying that what is the impact that you have brought out, and then how you did it. So that's also a thing that could be done. And definitely, please don't add your 10th or 7th, 8th standard achievements in the CV. Please don't do that. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
For sharing the RSE framework, Swati, I'll use it next time on my CV.
I'm sure you already had that, Akshay.
Right, Samarth, you're saying something.
So one of the things that I've seen people do is that, for example, you'd say that I want to build a spike in my extracurriculars, and they would go around and gather 8 or 10 points of extracurriculars. They would involve themselves in everything from volunteering to being part of this society. That is not really a spike. That is not you creating impact per se. Do not try to list down multiple headers under one particular section and say that, what is my impact and this is a spike. It's not a spike. Spike could be the 3 extracurriculars that you list, and under that one extracurricular, you have done something special. So that is the spike. So do not populate your CV unnecessarily. I've seen a lot of people do that. I think that is not as helpful as we think it is.
Just like a summary of, I think, all the points in a way. You want to tell a story through your resume, right? You want to tell a story through your CV. So make sure that comes out. And for that, you want to also basically 2 hacks that you can do out for this is one that I learned was just give your CV once you are done with all the formatting, once you're done with your RAC format, you have the main points in place, give it to somebody for a minute, let them read it, and then ask them, what do you think about this candidate? Is your story coming across? So if you are hearing a consistent story across whatever 3-4 people at least, you know that you have a story in place. And secondly, I think there is another thing which goes on in consulting, that if you're able to fold your CV in half, like vertically, and the first half is able to convey your key messages. So this is to check that your result is actually coming out in the front.
Right.
That again is another hack to see that you have brought everything that is of importance to the front. So yeah, I think that would be 2 things that I think you can try out.
Right, great points by everyone. Just one last point which I will add is that, as Ria mentioned, give it to people. Also please reach out to mentors. So what I used to do was I reached out to people who are already in my dream companies, so that they can give me some gyan regarding, is it relevant? Maybe is the CV well made from that company's perspective? And that helped me. And I think in a B school you will have many seniors who are good at CV making. So reach out to them, and I'm sure they will be happy to help. So yeah, that is something. Apart from that, I know the RSE framework by Swati. not being technical, not mentioning points from your school, all of them are very important. Please don't have any points from your school because it clearly shows that तुमने recently कुछ नहीं किया. Okay, so yeah, so please do keep these things in mind. All right, one last question on the CV perspective, on the CV, topic of discussion is that, do you really think PORs are that important? I think Varun, you were part of 2 or 3 clubs. Swati, you yourself were part of the Alcom. How important is a POR or any POR on campus? Do you really think people should 100% go for POR on campus?
Okay, so two points here. First, no, I don't think that 100% it's a necessity for you to have a POR, then only you can get into consulting. That's not the case. But I would not also go as far as to say that it doesn't matter. I think when you take a POR, it basically sends a message that you're not going to just sit back and relax now that you've made it to an IIM. Right. It's just that story. Because what I have also realized is BCG, at least, there was one person and I really lived by him. He's very, very smart. And he gave me one suggestion when we talked initially, the first day I went for my interview. And then he was the only person I was working with during my internship. So this guy told me one thing, that see, every time you go to the next stage of your life, right, you have to look around everybody, the people around you. And then the thing that you should feel is that there's still a lot to do and a lot to go. You should not get comfortable wherever you are, even if that is BCG. So that was the message I got, that you might be in the top tier consulting firm in the world. It doesn't matter. There's still a lot more you can do. Right. So don't limit yourself. And that is the message that POR sent, right? For example, when I came into IIM, I could have just relaxed back and I could have just, chilled around. But I didn't do that. I became a part of 3 different clubs, committees, and IGs. And that will send a message to my interviewer and my recruiter that, look, this guy could have just chilled because everybody gets placed in IIM. I mean, everybody knows, right? So expectations nahi hai. But fir bhi, he went on and did something which he could have at that time done to utilize his own time in a productive manner. I think that's the only message that's going. Having said that, there are a lot of other things that you can utilize to compensate this POR. Yeah. If you don't have a POR, go and participate in events or go and participate in case competitions. Do very well in your academics or, participate in an NGO or spend your time with an NGO. Use your time a little bit productively and don't get complacent. Right. That is the idea.
Yeah. Just one point I would like to add here, is that, when you're choosing your POR, while one consideration people have is their resume. But I think a larger consideration should be whether you are really interested in it. Exactly. Because if you're not, there is going to be a lot of work. And if you can't do it, and it will show through in your interviews because, those are the points that they will discuss. If you're not passionate about it, don't do it. Do something, even if it's a smaller POR, do that if you're passionate about, because you will have a lot more to speak about it. And I'm sure it will show in what you write in your POR also.
Great. Okay. So we have a lot of questions. I think so. Let's just take 5-6 questions from the audience and we can then wrap it up. So the first question which we have from Preetam Patel, very interesting question, which I think many of you will have an opinion on, is that how is work-life balance being a consultant?
I knew this question was coming.
There are a lot of misconceptions. Can you please clarify it?
This is an understatement. How can it be a misconception unless you really know what happens inside? But okay. I think, work-life balance is all about, how you manage your time. I think, of course, consulting is a difficult job because it's client-facing and clients are basically sometimes irrational. So what they demand is something that you require time to give, but you don't have that much time. So you have to overwork and you have to spend a little bit more time. Work-life balance is a little skewed into negative, I would say, but again, manageable. If you want to manage your time well, and if you have the capability to ask for help whenever necessary, when you can ask for that support from your team and the culture is supportive, I think work-life balance is definitely achievable, and that happens almost everywhere. Also, it depends on the project you are on. Sometimes, there are short-term projects, very fast-paced projects. Unfortunately, at that time, the demand is too high. Sometimes there are implementation projects or long-term project wherein you can use your own time to, decide what are your milestones and benchmarks. So obviously, a lot of factors come in. But ऐसा नहीं है कि जैसे conception है कि every day you have to slog for 17 hours a day or 16 hours a day, a weekend नहीं मिलता है, etc. etc. That's not true at all. This is a hyped up. You can manage time and you can survive in consulting for a long time. Not a problem.
Great. I hope that answered your question. So let's take a question by Vimal. Very interesting. Will we get time inside campus to learn for such roles, or should we start preparing from now itself? You will get ample amount of time. If I talk about myself, and Varun said that as well, that we never did anything before coming to campus. I mean, we never prepared for consulting. But would you recommend someone to start from now? I mean, just out of curiosity, now that you've done your MBA.
Not really, not recommended.
Not really.
I think you'd be sort of shooting a lot of arrows in the dark. You need your peers, you need people who would guide you. You don't want to do those cases on your own. So, and plus doing too much, because at the end of the day, the case numbers are limited, right? If you're just done with them too early, I think you lose the mindset. So rather start when you're on campus, when you're getting inducted. I think that's a good time to start.
I think practicing too much will make you a little mechanical also, because you'll try to force fit those frameworks. So I think this is the time that you should chill, and once you're on campus, you can get into that mindset and start preparing.
Initially, also when you are on campus, you would rather first focus on your acads, and then once the whole environment around you will start changing, you'll know that that's the time to start.
Absolutely. Okay. Right. So one question by HP. I have multiple attempts in my CA final. I've just cleared CA. What can I do to get into consulting? So honestly, as someone who cleared in the second attempt, I'll tell you, attempts will not really matter, because just looking at your CV, they cannot understand that you've taken an attempt. Your score will matter, and I think there are various ways to build spikes, which we've discussed extensively. So just follow those tips. I don't think the number of attempts will be a big problem for you. Okay. All right. So there's one more question. That would mentioning about being a state board top 10 ranker in 10th and 12th count as a spike in your resume?
I wouldn't mention 10th.
Yeah, and it may be or may not be, because it depends on the kind of people who are around you and what sort of spikes they have, right? Because it's always a comparative study. But yes, if you don't have anything else, go ahead, mention it.
Great. Okay. So Mukund has asked this question 15 times. So let's take this up, which is, what is the scope of a lawyer plus MBA in consulting? The problem is it's a very broad question, but yeah, I think, yeah. So Varun, take it up if you want.
Yeah, a lot of scope. I think when you talk about consulting, there is a complete different wing in consulting, which is called legal consulting, and now corporate legal consulting, etc. So when you are a lawyer and MBA, you understand both the aspects, legal as well as the management aspects of things. So I think there is a lot of scope, but again, the kind of projects you will be a part of will more around compliance and more around these areas. It would probably not. And again, once you get into consulting, nothing matters, right? It's only your CV that is going to be a little different. It will be a spike, of course, that there are very few lawyers in MBAs. So that will act like a spike, and they would want your experience to be a part of their entire team as well. So that would be a hike. And once you do get into consulting, whatever experience you have basically won't matter, because more and more experience you're going to get working on different projects and different sort of industries, any which way. So yes, it will help in some sort of companies which decide the role for you initially itself. For example, if you come to Accenture, there's a team called legal consulting team. So they will probably want you more than my team, which is Smart Connected Products, because of your relevance to law. Similarly, there are compliance teams, etc. in Deloitte, PwC, etc. as well, wherein you will, or sustainability team for that matter. These are the teams where your role will be slightly higher than business strategy teams or technical teams or high-tech teams. But again, for MBB, at least for the top tier one, it is a very big spike, and they would definitely want to shortlist you if your CV is well made. And then if you get in, it doesn't matter. Then you get exposure to everything.
I mean, yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think it's a very big spike you have. And I'll probably share my experience. When I was in IMK, there were 5 CAs in our batch. So demand supply wali baat hai, we were different basically. And if you look at the number of shortlists we out of the we 5 got was very different from the shortlist which others basically got. So it does help if you have a profile which is different from others. In this case, being a lawyer will be very helpful. Okay, so HP has asked one more question that do you think backend of BCG is not good? I mean, how good a work is that? So what do you mean by backend? Are you talking about capability networks here? Do clarify so that we can take that question. Shubham has also asked, are there assistants to help you in your consulting team?
What? Sorry. What was the question?
Are there assistants to help you in your consulting team? So no, there are no assistants. You have to do all the work yourself.
It's only after you become a senior manager or something. And those assistants are very basic tasks. I think
those are administrative assistants.
Yeah. What you might be looking for are the resources. So there are definitely resources. There is a knowledge management team which will help you with your research. There are analytics teams. There are capability networks which can help you with some sort of advanced analytics, etc. So those kind of teams do exist, but you don't have assistants.
Right. So last question, and then let's wrap up this webinar, which is, summer placements will be around the corner in 5 to 5 months. What are some tips which you would want to give the incoming batch? And Ria, even you can answer that, not for summer placements, but in general, any tips you would want to give for the people who are coming in, how they can spend their time right now, etc.
I think, so I'll just wrap it up for effort. I think, again, we have talked about the entire process all along. So first, please focus on your CV. Please try to make it well-rounded. Please keep it grammatically correct and well-formatted. Then secondly, make a group of people you think are interested in consulting right away. Start reading through the material that is available online. Choose the right set of content you would want to follow once you get the shortlist. Try to create that map. What are the industries, etc., etc. And then finally, prepare. Chill around and prepare. Please do not stress. And this is what happened with me. So I am just highlighting that a lot of people are going to come to you, and these are the people who will go for these same interviews and say that, yesterday I finished 20 cases, day before yesterday I finished 30 cases. Number of cases and quantity doesn't matter, as Swati said. I, on whole paradigm of preparation, did 12 cases. It worked out for me. So chill around and prepare normally. I would only suggest you to read through those cases so that your mind expands to the possibility of creating the right structure when something completely out of the blue strikes you in the interview. So that, I think, is a priority from my standpoint. Yes, preparation is also very important, but do not stress way too much that it makes you uncomfortable and nervous while you are in the real interview, thinking that you have such great competition. Competition doesn't matter, only you matter. Irrespective of who is there out there, they are fighting for themselves and you're fighting for yourself. There is no limit to the number of people consulting firms are going to hire from the set of batches that go and give those interviews, right? So you will make a case for yourself. Nobody else will make a case for you. So keep that in your mind and be chill. Please chill around. Itna nahi stress lena hai. Consulting hai, ho jayega. It's a path and process that you have to follow. Enjoy your time while you are preparing. Keep this preparation in mind as a positive only, irrespective of whether you get into consulting or not, because this will just expand the horizon of how you think. This preparation will help anyway. So that's all from my end.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say once that I always say that consulting is synonymous to being adaptive. So sort of being adaptive is the core skill that you need to have. And unlike how we've really done our academics prior to a B school, for example, we've done a lot of rote learning. We've tried to memorize a lot of things. That is something that I'd not recommend you to do with consulting at all. In cases being memorized by people and force-fit solutions being put in certain other cases. And that's why I really say that 5 months before your summers, do not try to prepare those cases. Do not try to deep dive. At least go through it on the surface level. Have a bird's eye view. You can do that, but don't deep dive because that will sort of, I would say that ignite this rote learning concept in us, and you will end up learning these cases and mugging these up. So don't do that. Let it be a gradual process. Let yourself adapt to it slowly, and it will be a good journey.
I think, but you should like start 2 to 3. So what happened with me was when you enter college, like it's like the freshers happen, then it's the PORs, and a lot of things come up. So summer placements just come in your face, and I just realized that I had not prepared well enough. So start thinking, when would you start preparing? Not right now, but maybe 2-3 months before the summer placements, because first term is like so fast paced, you will not realize how the time has just flown by. So just be conscious of how you're spending your time and when do you really want to start preparing.
And just 2 tips for the day that you're actually giving your interview. One is, just when you are getting into that call, try to have that connect with your interviewer, understand on what wavelength is it, because that really helps. So even if you fumble through your case, you want the interviewer to understand where you are coming from and where exactly he is in the way that you're thinking. And then secondly, I think just think about it as these people are also people who have gone through the same process. Okay, so they are very much like you. It's not like they are at some other level and you are at some other level. They have also seen the same journey. So just chill out about that and know that they're there to help you. In most cases, it's not going to be a stress interview. Their idea is to help you through the process and just understand how to think. So just take it easy. I think that would be it.
Great. Guys, thank you so much. This was very helpful. Just one last thing. Ansh, the finance session will happen next week. So please do tune in for that. Thank you so much to Varun, Riya, Swati, Samarth for taking out time on a Sunday. This was very helpful. And I'm sure many people learned a lot of new things from this webinar. I myself learned quite a few new perspectives. I enjoyed the session. Thank you so much for taking out time. And thank you so much to the audience as well for tuning in. And we hope to see you soon, once again next week, when we tackle how to get into finance. So have a good weekend. Enjoy the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Akshay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.